What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Entrepreneur on Campus podcast. Let's go. I'm a college student, I'm an entrepreneur, and I love learning. I've created this podcast to help you discover hidden opportunities. Hey guys, super excited about today's interview with Preston Alder of Neighbor, one of the founders of Neighbor. Neighbor is a company that is disrupting the self-storage space around the entire United States. And they started their company in 2017, about a year and a half ago, and are currently in 38 different states. Their growth has been incredible, and I'm super excited to show you guys this interview because Preston opens up a lot about the market, and he shares some really great insights, and I was able to learn a lot about what a shared economy is, how it works, and it's a great interview. So I'm excited for you guys to listen to it. Here it is. Awesome. I'm here today with Preston Alder of the company Neighbor. Thanks for being here, Preston.
It's good to be here, Matt.
So I have a lot of questions that I want to ask you. Super interested in your company. As I was just mentioning to you right before this interview started, I started looking into real estate over the summer, and as I was driving up and down the freeway, I kept seeing your billboard, Neighbor, and it said the Airbnb of storage, and I was super interested, so I looked into that online, and then as I moved out to college, I'm like, so basically what your company does, and you can correct me if this is wrong, but you can rent out spaces to store things. And so I was just thinking, how can I make a little bit of money? So when I moved out to college, I wanted to rent my room and just make a little bit of extra money. So I've just thought that the idea of Neighbor is super smart, and I'm super interested in learning more about it today. So first off, can you tell me a little bit about Neighbor? Like, how did it start, and kind of where you're at today?
Yeah, no, you did a good job describing it. So Neighbor's a peer-to-peer storage marketplace. So we take people that have underutilized space. That could be any kind of space. It can be RV pads. It could be a basement they're not using. In your case, you were thinking about an actual bedroom. We have closets, large like outdoor lots. We even have people with warehouse spaces that are listing that space. Basically, anyone that has space that they're not utilizing can list it on Neighbor. It's completely free. It's on neighbor.com. You set the price, you set all the features, you set the accessibility, like when people can access that space. We'll send a professional photographer to go take photos of that space and improve those listings. And then, similar to any kind of classifieds website that looks like almost like a Craigslist, in Utah there's KSL, it's very similar. Our renters then get on, they can browse by map, they can sort by features and filters, and then they can rent space that makes most sense for them. Now, Neighbor's half the price of traditional storage. We even have like some traditional storage. Half the price on average, like for our peer-to-peer listings. Now, that's not to say like we're also we're not an exclusive platform either. We realize that there's all types of storage that are needed out there. And we even have storage facilities that will list their excess space on our site. And it's just a way for us to like be this full, all-encompassing service option for anyone that needs storage. Essentially, we're trying to take this old archaic industry that's always been very expensive because there's been a supply and demand problem. Like there's very limited supply when it comes to how many storage facilities are available to the demand out there. And we're just like solving that problem with technology, helping homeowners that weren't able to monetize their space make money every month as well.
So can you dive into that just a little bit? So the industry that you're in is real estate, and then the market is self-storage space, right? Or just storage space in general?
Yeah. No.
And is that huge? Are there tons of storage spaces in the U.S.? Like what does that market even look like?
Yeah, it is a huge market. And in fact, like it surprised us as we got into like how big it actually is. It's $38 billion in the U.S. alone in revenue.
Wow.
But in market cap, it's close to $500 billion. It's very large. It's also a very fragmented market. Most of the industry leaders own like well under 10%. Like you've got your top industry leader around 7 to 8%, and the ones after that are like 2% or below.
Wow. A lot of different people involved in it.
Exactly. Yeah. And like each of those like industries will make very high margins. They're making a lot of money for like it's a safe cash cow investment. The number of storage facilities is also astounding. There's over 50,000 storage facilities in the U.S.
Wow.
Closer to 60,000 at this point in 2019. And just to put that in perspective, like we oftentimes use a metric where we talk about if you were to combine the number of the top 5 fast food chain restaurants in the U.S., Starbucks, Burger King, McDonald's, Dunkin' Donuts, and I think Domino's, if you combine all those, there are more storage facilities than all those units combined.
Wow.
Those are facilities, not units. And I think the most astounding stat...
I didn't realize how big that was. Yeah, that's crazy.
It's huge. It's a pretty crazy
It's
industry.
insane. Gosh.
In addition to that, it's pretty astounding to think that the average facility, each one of those, on average, is 93% full. So they're bursting at the seams. They can't fill these things fast enough. And so this idea that we can kind of break out of these brick and mortar walls and open up storage space to anyone that has extra space. And so that...
Wow. So the demand is actually bigger than that supply, even though the supply is enormous.
Yeah, astronomical.
Wow. And so Neighbor is trying to essentially revolutionize the way that storage space has worked because the supply will become almost unlimited, right?
Yep.
Because anyone can rent out anything.
Yeah, and we view it more than just that. We're not just something that is providing more supply out there. We're not going and developing more land. We're redefining the experience of a user. We're providing that at a cheaper cost. We're making it in such a way that you can download an app, and on that app you can place a reservation and send your host like a message, or you can send them a request and get feedback in real time. We're doing it so that payments are collected automatically and like sent each month. You'd be surprised that there hasn't been a ton of innovation in this industry just because it's such an old one.
Yeah. And how have customers responded? Have they been able to see that vision a lot, or has it been just a big push on your guys' part? How's that been?
Yeah, no, our customers love us. Like our NPS score as of this last week, I think we're almost at a 70. I think we're at a 68.
What's an NPS? Sorry.
NPS is Net Promoter Score.
Okay.
It essentially is like a way of ranking how your viewers like your site. I wish I was better prepared in like telling you national averages, but like that is actually a
really
very
high
high
score
as far as like national averages go.
Huh. Interesting. Okay. So I'm kind of curious about how there's a lot of different kind of shared economy platforms that have come out. The most known are probably Uber, Lyft, Airbnb. So I'm kind of curious about why did that model, is that what originally came to your head when you guys thought, okay, I want to be able to create a space where people can store their stuff that's not necessarily a storage space? Were you thinking originally of that same model, or was it a different model that you were thinking of?
Yeah, no. So honestly, this wasn't like I didn't go out gold mining trying to find like what is an idea that could make a ton of money. Like what's a home run idea that would be a great marketplace to build similar to Airbnb or Uber. Really, the idea came about because a couple of summers ago, I needed storage. I was a poor college student, and I had recently gotten married and realized I need to put all of our stuff somewhere. We're leaving for the summer. We're going to be out of the country, and I can't find a place. And so I started calling storage facilities. All the storage facilities in my surrounding city were completely booked out. I was in a college town, and so like that was fairly expected. And I called the surrounding cities, and those facilities were even more expensive. They were very expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Like 10 by 10 was more than I was willing to pay as a college student.
Yeah.
And so I kind of stuck it to the man and decided I was going to figure out another way to do this. And so I started calling around until finally I found an old neighbor of ours that actually has a garage that he wasn't using. Took my stuff and stored it there, and realized I would have gladly. I actually had to travel about an hour and a half. I packed it all up in a truck, drove an hour and a half up north, put it in this garage, and drove back. I had to pay $80 to rent this truck. It was an unpleasant experience overall. Yeah. And I realized if I could have found a place in my down the street, in my neighborhood, exactly, with a neighbor, I would have gladly paid less money than I would have been forced to pay at a storage facility. And so that was where the seed of the idea came about. And And really, that's something each one of us that works here at Neighbor deeply believes that this product is not only a cool innovation, but it's also adding value to thousands of people's lives right now.
Right, just helping solve that pain. I've got to ask, Neighbor the domain. How did you get that?
Yeah, no.
Because that's amazing.
It was a lot of work and negotiations, but we're excited to have it, and it's something that's very near and dear to our brand because when you're not storing with a stranger, you're storing with a neighbor, and that's important to us, that people can realize like this isn't a scary thought to be storing with John down the street. Like this is someone that you potentially even already know or have mutual friends with, and see them on a regular basis. And that's the vision long term, is we want people to be storing neighbors with neighbors. The domain was it was important to us, and we went through different iterations. We started with a different spelling of the word neighbor, and then we also acquired lots of domains around the word neighbor, like neighbor storage and storewithneighbor.com, and eventually ended up with neighbor.com. And it took about a year of negotiations.
Have you seen that currently most of your users are actually storing with people that they know, or are they mostly unknowns at this point?
Yeah, at this point, most of them are unknowns, but it's really cool to see the fact that, like, you would say that they didn't know each other beforehand, but they definitely know each other now. Like, there's a friendship and a bond that happens there. It's been a while since we've ran this stat, but the last time we ran it was like more than 50% of our neighbor hosts, in some way, shape, or form, like assisted their renter as they moved in. Like they were courteous, like they provided waters, or they'd like open their home in such a way that made it easier and better, like a better experience to move to begin with. Like,
interesting.
You think of going back to community values of neighbors helping neighbors, and that's something that's very present in our brand and culture.
Okay. Interesting. So the idea of the sharing economy is you provide a win to the customer because the host, right? Because they can make money by renting it out. And then it's a win to the client who's trying to store something because it's a pain and they get it for a lot cheaper. And then how is it exactly that you guys win? Because like you said, you're paying for a professional photographer to come in and take pictures. You have the expenses of a company, some overhead. So how is it that you guys can win?
No, great question. So the way that we've set it up is in such a way that when let's say a homeowner, we call them a host, lists their space on Neighbor. Let's say they rent out their garage. A lot of these people coming to our site have no idea how to even think about pricing that garage. They're not sure. We've come up with a pricing algorithm that triangulates storage prices within their area.
Wow.
And so we know like exactly how much the facilities in their area cost. And when they're listing their space, this homeowner, we'll give them a suggested price. We'll say, hey, you should set your price within this range. We give them a range that's well beneath the price of a storage facility. Like I said, within that 50 to 60% range. And these homeowners are excited because they're taking a space that was making $0 before, and they're now going to make, let's say, $100 a month. This is like for simple math's sake, and that number could fluctuate greatly depending on where you're at. And now that $100 a month, the way that Neighbor makes its money is as we advertise it on our site, we will add our service fee, and that'll be anywhere from 0 to 15-ish% like per month onto that renter. And as a renter rents that space, like that space that was 50% the price of traditional storage might now be 65-ish% of the price of traditional storage.
Okay.
And so the renter is still getting like a much better price space in their own neighborhood. So hopefully like down the street from them, they don't have to go to miles into like a zoned area where storage buildings are built. And that's how Neighbor makes its service fee. The host makes exactly what they ask for, and the renter saves money.
So you said 0 to 15. How do you determine like how much you guys are taking?
Yeah, totally. It depends on a lot of factors. Like a lot of those, the main factor being how expensive that price is. Like I'm not going to go on all the details and how we set up our algorithm, but long story short, if it's a very big and expensive space, like we don't need to take as much as Neighbor in order to cover our costs for marketing, growth, and our Neighbor guarantee.
Okay. So what have been the main issues and problems perhaps problems that you didn't expect once you started this company, and especially with kind of the shared economy?
Yeah. I mean, it's not a secret. Like, if you do any research on the sharing economy, you're going to realize that like there's this chicken and egg syndrome where you need to have supply and demand. That it requires a lot of work to build both of those. Now, it's something that we've made a lot of mistakes. We've grown a ton from it. We've learned a lot from that. But it's been a daunting challenge to grow. Like, we're trying to service both these homeowners that have space. We need to have our messaging, our advertising, and our just like all of our like we have to have attention on them as well as attention on our renters who need storage. And so I'd say building both sides of that market have been a challenge, but it's been a blast. Like, we've loved taking on that challenge, and we've got some of the smartest minds on it, which has been great.
If you're creating algorithms, it sounds pretty smart. So if you go back in time to when you started this company, would you start the same company? Would you start that same company, or would you do a different one, or what path would you take?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'd say the two most compelling things about working with and for Neighbor right now are the team and the vision that we have at Neighbor. And so I wouldn't say like in this very moment, I would say yes, definitely Neighbor. Like,
yes. Like,
disrupting the storage industry is awesome. But I think the reasons I love working for Neighbor so much are those two reasons. Like, the first is like I'm working with the smartest, highest caliber, best people that I could think of right now. And the second thing is like the vision that like we are building a product that is improving the lives of thousands of people. Like, homeowners can now subsidize their mortgage rates by 10% because they're renting out a portion of their garage that they're not using, or a basement that they never planned to even use. Like, homeowners are making monthly residual income that never existed before. Like, they don't even have to go out and work for this. They're not spending hours of time to make that money. Well, we have homeowners making $15,000 a year.
Wow.
And that's meaningful income. And really, they don't need to provide, like, they're not working for that money. They're just like providing an asset that wasn't making money before on our site, and they're
creating assets, really.
Yeah. And so those are the two factors that, like, the reason I personally love working at Neighbor. It's the fact, like, against the team, and it's the vision that we're helping individuals both save money on storage and also like provide another source of income. And so if I were to go back and do it again, like, I would need to have those two things.
Yeah.
And right now Neighbor fills both those.
Yeah. So a little twist on that question. Today, 2019, we're in March. If Neighbor was non-existent right now, and you had this idea right now, and the market has changed maybe a little bit, I don't know exactly, would you go ahead and start it again, March 2019?
Yeah, it's a great question. Definitely.
Yeah.
For me, and you're asking the biased me, because I've spent every waking moment thinking about this for the last 2 years, and like I'm obsessed with the idea. I'm obsessed with like the team I'm working with and everything we've got going on for us. And so I'm not going to change that mindset, but that's my biased answer.
Yeah. So you mentioned to me that you kind of stumbled upon this idea, and when you felt a certain pain, were you planning on entrepreneurship before this company?
Not at all, actually. I mean, I think I've always had it in me that I was going to gravitate towards entrepreneurship. Like on my phone, I've always had a running list of different ideas and business like ventures that I think would be awesome. But I'm also a very risk adverse person. Like, I never aspired to that. It wasn't in my plans to be an entrepreneur. I had a full-time offer that I'd accepted, as well as my two co-founders. Both like,
wow,
we're all pretty risk adverse. Like, this wasn't something that we were aspiring to. But the opportunity was just both present and exciting, so we took it. Yeah.
Wow. As you've gotten into the space, were you guys some of the first people to enter into the space?
Yeah, no, there's like, we actually didn't know this beforehand, but as we entered in, there have been lots of like specklings of companies that have come and gone. Like, most of them have been very small, and no one in the industry has very much traction as far as like, there's ourselves and a couple others that have relative relatively large traction.
So, as you mentioned, how big this kind of market is, have you seen like other opportunities, not including what you guys do as your business, just within storage or within the storage space in general?
Yeah, I think it's um, just for anyone that understands a market like on a
There's
deep
always
level and is
opportunities.
researching it. Yeah, the deeper you go, the more you realize that there's always going to be opportunities within that market, and I think that goes to say for any industry. So we've definitely seen different things that have come up, um, but we've stayed really focused
Yeah.
on the niche that we're in.
So, what would be the reasons why you would recommend an entrepreneur to get involved with self storage, and also the reasons not to?
That's a good question. Like when you say get involved in self storage, are you saying like investing in storage facilities? Are you talking about peer to peer marketplaces?
About studying perhaps the storage space and starting some kind of company, some kind of innovative company, or as we're at like the previous question I asked, if there's opportunities there. So getting involved and looking at opportunities to start their own companies within that space.
Totally. Um, I let me know if I'm answering the question right. Like I would encourage um, anyone with an idea and one that they feel very passionate about.
Mhm.
Like, well, first off, let me preface by saying that I'm not a big fan of encouraging people to be entrepreneurs.
Right.
I encourage people to get well educated and build practical skill sets. And if like you're bound to be an entrepreneur, like you're going to gravitate towards that. And now like you could gravitate towards that at a very young age and know like that's exactly what you want to do. But I wouldn't get on a stage trying to convince people to be entrepreneurs. Like I feel like if it like if you are to become an entrepreneur, like you will gravitate toward that naturally.
Mm-hmm.
And like personally, like I value the natural, like the practical skill sets I got before starting Neighbor, and I wish I had even more like
Really?
skill sets. Like I wish I were a better like computer engineer and could actually dive into data better in that way.
Mm-hmm.
But to answer your question a little better, like if someone has that desire and they have an idea, I think innovation is what drives us forward in any industry, like as a society. So I think innovating and creating ideas and creating value, especially, is important for progression and the way that our free market is set up. It will also like lead to success in business. So I would encourage people to enter industries to disrupt, to improve in any way possible.
Awesome. That was a great answer. You did answer the question. And I also found that very interesting because that's something that I think about a lot. What you answered at the beginning of that was essentially that you wanted to learn hard skills that you could apply, and then if opportunities came, that's great. And I've heard kind of both sides of that. People saying choose to be an entrepreneur and then look for opportunities, or go to school, learn some hard skills, and then with those hard skills, and once you're into an industry already, then look for the problems within that. So that's great advice. Appreciate that. So the last couple questions I want to ask are, um, I'm interested in kind of the routines that people have and what drives success. So do you have any specific morning or nighttime routines that you feel like help you focus and maybe benefit your life and specifically your business as well?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. Exercise is a big thing for me. I'm not the most fit person in the world if you know me, but I really enjoy getting out and running. Like, my wife and I are training for a marathon right now, and like I thrive off of that. I don't get to it every day, but that's something I wish I did. As far as morning routines go, I try to wake early. I'll my go-to breakfast that I have almost every morning are steel cut oats that I'll cook, make an oatmeal, put blueberries in, and a little bit of honey.
Mm-hmm. So do you have a set wake up time, or do you change on a daily basis?
It generally depends on what time I get to bed.
Okay.
But I'll shoot to like get up at 6:30. Like that's the goal.
Yeah.
Earlier, depending on like what projects I have, and later if I've stayed up. And then I'm also religious, so I'll take time to meditate and read scriptures.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll just review the day. So I'll go through my calendar and figure out like what goals do I need to accomplish. I have a system set up where I'll also like I have these personal success indicators that I'll say these are like the 2 tasks that I need to accomplish today in order to be successful. And I will obviously have more than 2 things on my calendar, and I plan to do every single thing, but I'll narrow it down to 2 like vital tasks that
this will get done today.
This will get done today.
You do that every single morning. I write those down.
I'll have them up in my calendar, and those are. It's good for me to reflect. I even the way I set it up is in my Google Calendar. I'll just have it as an all-day event. So I'll put like a little PSI, so it's a personal success indicator number 1 and number 2, and it's always present, like regardless of the time of day. I always see it. It's just
interesting.
It's a good way because when you think about it, like 2 things doesn't seem like very much, but if you've got 5 days of the week or 6 days of the week that you're working and you've set those, you now have 12 very important tasks that get done that week. And like I said, I'll obviously have more planned in my schedule than just that, but those are the important ones.
And obviously this changes on the day-to-day of the business, but do you feel like when you wake up, are you generally excited to go and work, or does it feel pretty dreadful sometimes? I know I feel like that sometimes with school. I've got to go do homework, and
totally.
I don't want to be there sometimes. But
yeah, no, I absolutely love what I'm doing. I love the team that I'm with. It doesn't like I'm very motivated every time I do come to work. Sure there'll be some days that feel a little slower, but I'm very energized by what I'm doing. I can't imagine doing something different.
That's fantastic. I love that. Last question. So you talked about some of the goals that you've set. You like to set daily tasks. What is your process with kind of longer term personal goals and for the company as well?
Yeah, no, great question. Well, on a personal note, my wife and I will set personal goals, and we'll do that yearly and quarterly. We'll go through like, this is what we want to get done this year. This is like what we want to get done this quarter. It's very similar on how I do it at work as well. So quarterly, I actually, within our department, we've adopted Google's framework, their OKR framework, which essentially is like you're setting broad, like long-term goals. But like, this is what we want to accomplish this quarter, and you'll set up these key result like indicators that they're essentially shorter goals, like measurable goals and numbers that you need to hit in order to accomplish the broad like goal itself.
Gotcha.
Highly recommend, like, you can look up lots of videos and research on it to understand how the framework is set up, but it's essentially setting like bite-sized goals so that you break up the next 3 months of your life into these specific goals.
Awesome. Well, Preston, I honestly appreciate you spending your time with me and answering some of my questions, and it was super insightful to get your input, your thoughts about the company, the industry, entrepreneurship in general, and goal setting. So thanks again for being here.
Sure. No, thanks for having me. I appreciate it, man.
Okay. All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening today to this podcast with Preston. I hope that you were able to find it insightful. If you did, then please subscribe to the podcast. I'm going to be launching episodes every week, and also if you can rate this podcast on iTunes, that helps so that more people can get it. Thank you so much. Love you guys. Bye.